the streaming setup. Yeah. No, that's not fun. I mean, it's not a wacky. Thank you. Hey, how's it going?
Hey, good. How are you doing?
Good. You good? Do you need this thing? No?
I'm using this one, thanks. Can you help me double check that I'm streaming correctly?
Absolutely.
I just hit stream.
Do you have the mic on?
Yeah. Let me just turn it on. Okay, now it's on.
Well, the audio is like really low. Can you just talk a bunch?
Hello, hello, hello.
Okay, it's like pretty low. If it ends up, like, I guess you could start off by asking them if it's loud enough.
Yeah.
Because if it's not, then we can turn. Can you talk a bit more?
Hello, 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 hello.
You say like a normal voice thing.
What people think programming is versus how it actually is.
Oh, doesn't look like that's doing anything. Right. Wait, how about say stuff now?
Saying stuff now.
Right.
Stuff.
That doesn't do anything. What about this will do?
And more stuff now.
Hey, there we go. Yeah.
Woo.
So, I mean, I'll put it down a little bit, but you can play around with it and see what Calgary thinks.
Okay.
It might have been that whoever was in here before changed it a little bit.
Yeah.
And then as for streaming, yeah, so when you click stream, like it starts streaming automatically, then we give them this link.
Oh, okay.
So this is Calgary. Yeah. Sweet. And then this thing is good. I was just when you're done, you can just press stop stream, and that should be it. And then, do you know how to find the video afterwards?
No.
So just call me up afterwards.
Okay.
I'll show you how to find the video.
Thanks.
No problem. But yes, should be streaming now. Hey, yo, what up? Oh man, this is so exciting. Today's a big day. It's a very big day. It's a very big day for a particular reason. It's big because we're doing Mongo. And Mongo is short for, I guess, humongous. You can store humongous data sets. We're going to work with some pretty, you know how people talk about big data? That's what we're doing today. We're going to work with, you'll see what I mean in a second. It'll be a little bit sillier than you expect. Yeah, so let's plug this thing in. Zoop. This thing is streaming. We are missing, computers are there, we're missing Bobby. Bobby at 10 minutes late, I can't believe this guy. And then we're missing Seth, which is okay. We'll start the lecture off with a story. Trying to figure out how to pin this thing. So what we're doing today is, what is today's topic? Databases. Databases. State management and persistence. They make it sound a little bit more, I don't know, clinical, I guess, than it has to be. We are week 3, day 4. State management and persistence. So this is a very big day for you. Today is the day that y'all become full stack developers. Today's the day. You have worked on TinyApp. Right? You worked on TinyApp. That's an app that's mainly heavy on the back end. Right? Setting up routes, doing all that kind of stuff. You've worked on Tweeter so far. You haven't finished it, but you've been working on it. Tweeter's very heavy on the front end. We're doing stuff with, let's see, what do we do with Tweeter? We do, got to check. Y'all happy with light mode? Is that a no? All right. How about this? These are the notes, and let's you go through. How about quiet light? Oh shoot. Is quiet light good? No. Okay. Is you liked it? All right. What about Abyss? I've got tons of themes, man. I got Kimby Dark, Monokai Dim. All right. So Solarized isn't. So, or at least maybe it is now. It wasn't when I downloaded it. Okay, so Abyss is good. All right, again, tell me if this stuff is invisible, because glare is like really hard to read for y'all. So today is week 3, day 4, aka state management and persistence. We're gonna look at a bunch of stuff today. The first part of it is gonna start off with a bit of like a story time. Yeah, a bit of like a story time. I have to change this because the markdown doesn't actually render with a good color. All right, Monokai dimmed. We'll say this, good? Okay. Story time, plus a review of what we've done. Right. Then what the heck do I mean by persistence? And then little demo, and then big demo. Right? There's little demo, and then little demo's big brother, big demo. We're gonna see what that is. So, first of all, I said like you've worked on Tiny App. Said Tiny App, very heavy on the back end side, right? Done routes, etc. Right? That stuff. Working on Tweeter. What are you doing with Tweeter? What's in there? A little bit of CSS, right? A little bit of CSS. jQuery, yeah. A little bit of, this is how true professionals, jQuery. And then often McQuery. Yeah. So yeah, a little bit of that. What else? Ajax, yes. Over that, asynchronous what? JavaScript and XML. Asynchronous JavaScript and XML. Funny, you're technically doing Ajax, because it's asynchronous JavaScript and JSON, but Ajax, mostly front end. Front end. But we'll do a little bit of back end, and then depending on how much stretch you decide to do, like you might explore more and more on the back end. Today we bridge these things, and then we add one last piece to the back, which is the database. And you will then be crowned regents of the full stack world, I guess. Full stack developers. Now, there's a couple of things that we're going to talk about as we go through that. But the first is that I want to bring ourselves back to Tiny App and do a little bit of a thought experiment, right? A little bit of role play. So we could do a couple different things with Tiny App, correct? Right? What were the things that Tiny App let you do? Like our Tiny App features. Sell me Tiny App. What does it do? You can add a URL. Yes, you add a long URL. What happens? And it shortens it. Awesome. What else can I do with Tiny App? You can register a new user. Yeah. Hot dog. I'm going to split those into 2 features. Log in as a user. Perfect. What else? I could also log out. That's a great feature, right? It's you can make it like the Hotel California of websites. Like you can log in, but you can't. Like that's it. So we could create a user, log in as a user, create new tiny URLs. What happened with the tiny URLs after we made them? We could edit. We could edit tiny URLs, right? We could make them point to different places. And this is one last thing that we could do with the tiny URLs. Yeah, we could go to the tiny URL to see the big URL, like to get redirected. Right? We could do all that stuff. Very feature-rich application. very, very feature rich. Now, I want to talk about, what's that? Oh, I could delete them. Yeah, I could delete tiny URLs. Yes, delete them. It's also a very good feature. So let's think about how we ran TinyApp. As a developer, what did we do to get TinyApp up and going? Yeah, so Express, sure, that's the thing that we used. Let's say like you right now, you wanted to show me TinyApp. What are the steps that you have to go through every time you wanted to work on TinyApp? Right, so specifically I had to run the server, right, in the terminal, right, with like node server, blah, 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 right? And then later on you started using nodemon as well. Right? Point is, we had to have a thing running. So what happened after I made a bunch of tiny URLs and then I restart the server? Yes, the tiny URLs are fleeting, right? They're fleeting. If I turn off the server and turn it back on, they're lost, which isn't the best. Maybe we can deal with it, right? I might say, just never restart the server, and then the tiny URLs are all good, right? Absolutely a thing that we could do. The thing about the tiny URLs in our case was that we store them in a particular place, right? How did we store the tiny URLs in TinyApp? We're stored in a variable. What kind of variable? In a variable, an object. Right? We had this stored in an object, specifically in JavaScript. Right? We stored the stuff in JavaScript. This was stored, what I'll say, stored in memory. When you start Node is like this JavaScript program is born, right? It blinks its eyes, like the light like shines in its eyes, like, oh wow, so excited to be a Node program. These are all the things I'm gonna look. I'm having all these memories. Oh, my first date. Oh, my first heartbreak, right? Like, oh, Node goes through a whole life cycle. Oh, I remember all these things. And then one day, like maybe you've had TinyApp running for a while, and it's thinking, you know, I remember this tiny URL. And then you shut it off. And then you turn it back on again, and it's gone. It's all gone. It's very sad. We'd like that stuff to persist. And we could say that in order to have our data to persist, maybe we could just keep TinyApp running, right? Like maybe we could just keep TinyApp running forever. Not the worst idea, right? It's not the worst idea. We'll explore things a little bit more, and then we'll come back to this idea of maybe running TinyApp indefinitely in order to make sure that the tiny URLs never disappear. So the problem that we've identified is, I'm going to say the data is not persistent, right? It doesn't persist. It doesn't stay when you turn the app off and then back on again. So that's one of the things that we want to tackle, but we're going to identify a couple more things that we want to tackle about the data in TinyApp or the data in our applications. In order to talk about that, I need to identify a couple things. First of all, what is full stack development? And I said at the beginning of the lecture that today is the day you become full stack developers. You hit all of it, all the stack. You can do everything at the end of this lecture. So full stack development is sort of made up of two parts. Right? What would one of the parts be? The front end. Right? So the front end is, as we said before, maybe the CSS, the HTML, all the client-side JavaScript, right? All the JavaScript that runs on the browser, all your Ajax, all your fancy and cool like user-facing things, That's the front end. Awesome. Some people love working in the front end. That's where they want to stay forever. That's cool. Right? Some people are drawn to the opposite, the back end. And the back end, to put it in a nutshell, the back end serves specific pages or resources based on different parameters. Right? If you want a good answer to an interview question, oh, what's the back end? Well, the back end serves specific pages and resources. And you can quote me on this, Nima 2019. So the back end, I say it serves things based on different parameters. These parameters may be like routes. For example, I might have a get to /login, right? Or a get to /dogs12. Right? These are all maybe different routes that the backend interprets differently and returns different things. Right? There might be other parameters such as who is logged in. Right? Maybe when I go to get/friends and you go to get/friends, we get different data. Right? How does the server figure out that stuff? Like who's logged in? Sessions and cookies, right? So maybe sessions, cookies, cool. There might also be filter parameters. So for example, I might make a get to /friends, and then I might toss onto this a little query parameter saying, get me all the friends who are, I don't know, cool equals true. Get me all my cool friends. And I might also false. I want all my uncool friends. So I might be able to filter stuff. And that's what the backend tries to do. Now, it has to retrieve that stuff from somewhere, right? So the backend's also responsible for, I'll say managing and storing the data. Okay? Managing and storing the data. And that's actually particularly important when we talk about web development. Because the thing is, most useful web services need to manage data somehow. And most useful web services need to manage data somehow. We need to do things like maybe add data, right? Just like we talked about with TinyApp. Create a new URL or create a new user. Maybe edit the data. Maybe delete the data, right? Maybe get the data. What kind of things am I talking about here? They're methods, right? For example, like the get and put and delete and whatever. Okay? But there's also a higher level kind of idea of when I talk about doing these kinds of things with data. CRUD, right? These are CRUD actions, right? In general, when we talk about data, we want to think about what we can do to like interface with it and like, change it, right? Retrieve parts of it. And again, the idea that, or the word that we use for that, CRUD, create, read, update, destroy. Generally, we're going to ask, hey, how can we do these CRUD actions on a particular piece of data? Okay. Regardless of how the data is stored, that's something that we're probably going to be interested in. And what I encourage you to do is start thinking about websites that you already use, such as maybe YouTube, right? YouTube has a bunch of data. We can get videos, right? If you want, you could upload a video, right? You could edit the title of a video if you own that video. I could post comments. I could delete comments. I could reply to a comment, manipulating data somehow in a create, read, update, and destroy kind of fashion. Okay. And then just ... Right? We look at maybe Wikipedia. Same thing. Wikipedia, we might say the resource is articles, right? And I can create, read, update, delete articles, right? Does that idea make sense? Right? So these are all the things that I might want to do with data. And we did some, or actually all of those things with TinyApp. So we have this idea of these like CRUD actions. We have this idea of resources that make up like the meat of my application. Right? Again, most web apps that you're going to build are going to deal with interfacing with some data in one way or another. Websites are, to a degree, just windows into data. And I have maybe tiny app running at the end of boot camp. You finish boot camp. And you think, hey, you know what? I could go work somewhere. I could go work at Microsoft. I'm launching into a story for a second, by the way. I could go work at Microsoft. I could go work at Apple or whatever else, event-based. But you go, hey, you know what? No, I actually built a product earlier in boot camp. I built a full-featured product in my first 2 weeks. What I'm going to do as an entrepreneurial person, I'm going to take all the money that I have, in my case, my $15, or maybe, you know what, you raise a bunch of money. You go, you ring on doorbells, you call your friends up, you post a GoFundMe. You get a bunch of money, and what you do is you take that money and you call up NASA. And you say, hey, I'd like to speak with NASA, please. And they're like, yep, speaking. They're like, hi, I heard y'all have some supercomputers. And what I need is to actually buy one of your servers, or at least rent it out, and I want to run an application on it. And they say, oh, absolutely, that'll be $18 billion. And you're like, I actually got that. I borrowed that from my friends. And you go through all the paperwork, and you log into NASA's machine. You git clone your program. You go npm start. There we go. And you kind of sit back. Maybe you buy yourself a domain name to connect to tiny.com. Tiny.com. And then you start promoting it. You print out shirts, you get pamphlets, you give it to your friends, right? You start lobbying the government, right? All of a sudden, every Canadian citizen needs to have a tiny.com account to put all of the URLs that they ever use, all on Tiny App, right? On your Tiny App. And all of us at Lighthouse are like, man, we didn't think of that. Oh, we could have totally done this like years ago. But you've gone off. You're making so much money, right? Every time somebody makes like in order to, maybe before you deployed it, you made it so that people can only make accounts if they pay you first and they get an invite code. So you're raking in cash. So much money, so much money. ICO. You have like a coin. Things are great. Things are great for 10 years, right? 10 years later, you're sitting on Tiny Beach. You bought yourself an island, a tiny island. And you're sipping a tiny margarita. And your tiny butler comes by. Everything's just tiny. And as they're serving you just another tiny coconut, you stop and you say, hey, wait a sec. Tiny Alfred, how many users have signed up in the past week or so? And Tiny Alfred's like, I have no idea. We don't have a page for that. There's no analytics on that. And you go, okay, well, I've been thinking, how many people have made tiny URLs to the same URL, right? So that instead of me having a bunch of copies of it on the database, maybe everybody just points to the same one, right? I want to see how many people have gotten copies, duplicates. And Tiny Alfred's like, I have no idea. Like, I also want to know how many of these URLs are pointing to YouTube. Still no idea, right? Because we didn't code that into the application in the first place. The only thing that we could do is what? Like, how do we figure out that kind of information, or how do we embed that into our application? At this point, we're 10 years into Tiny App, you've got billions of users, and you want this kind of smart analytics on your application. If we turn Tiny App off, we lose absolutely everything. At this point, it's a dangerous game we're playing, right? If we wanted to add in a new feature, like maybe Tiny App Friends, we'd have to stop the application, code it up, and boot it back up. And if we had all that stuff in memory, it's all gone. So what we need is a place where we can take that data and actually put it in a separate place. so that my application and its data are actually decoupled from each other. Right? We need them to be separate so that I can mess around with each without affecting the other. So what we're talking about here is a particular base of data. Yeah. Huh? Not real. Well, yeah. 10 years ago, this was what happened to me. Yeah. What we need is a place to put the data, which we'll call a database. We'll see that database is actually a very loose term. So, in particular, in 3 points, the motivations for us finding a better solution for storing our data are motivations are: 1, I want the data to persist, right? And we understood this right from the beginning, right? We want our data to persist, but particularly I also want to have smart interactions with my data. That's something that I want to have. I want to be able to ask for particular bits of data, right? Maybe count how much there is and stuff like that. And as an extension, I'm thinking maybe while you're on your beach there, another idea pops into your head where you're like, you know what? I want a tiny.com app, right? I want a mobile app, right? And that app should share the same data. So what we're saying here is we want multiple applications to share the same source of data. And these are the problems that we're going to try and solve with a database, right? Enter the database. The database is, kind of abstractly speaking, a separate thing holding our data that our server can talk to. Right? It's a separate thing. And notice how vague the word thing is. Thing. The database could be anything as long as it's able to store the data and as long as the server is able to talk to it to ask it about the data. Right? We end up with a 3-tiered model. We end up with an interface, an application with some logic, and then the data. Right? Where the interface is, it's pretty. You know, maybe you click on things. Right? The interface is going to be your jQuery, right? Your website. Your application, this is the place where we have things like, you can't do that. You can't do that. Maybe it's got some logic that decides on things, or maybe decides what page you should be shown. And then finally is the data, where we have things like videos, text, images, yada, yada, yada. Images. I'll zoom in on this in a second. So we have many options for places that we can store our data to that our application can talk to. Right? One of the places that we can store data to is just a straight-up text file. Right? Ways to store data. We could store data directly into a text file. Right? You could just dump in a name to a text file. Right? We could store data in a text file following a specific format, right? Maybe to make it a little bit cleaner. You've talked about JSON so far. We could have JSON text files. We could have, anybody know what a CSV is? Comma-separated values. So, Nima, 6'4", and blonde, right? Just all real things. Where we store values by maybe types of things in order. So I might be able to store this, and then Jennifer, 3,000 feet, and Jennifer has rainbow hair, right? Or I might store the various types of data sort of in columns that are separated by commas. These are ways to structure my data, and what would be nice about this is with a CSV, I could say, hey, get me all the data for Nima, and I'd have to look through the file and find where Nima is and go get the data. Right? Or I might say, hey, get me everybody who is 6'4", right? And conceivably what I could do is write a program that goes through this text file and looks at everybody that's 6'4", maybe returns an array of it, right? So I could straight up store this stuff in a text file, right? I could store it in a text file using fs dot, I think it's write file, right? To write to a file, and maybe also fs dot read file to read from it. Stephen, I think you did something like that. Right? Totally works. Another thing that I could do for my database is I could just tell somebody. I could just have a person. Just have a person and tell them, hey, remember this. Remember that this long URL matches with this short URL. And I could just trust them to remember the thing and maybe have some way to have my server interact with them to get that data. Like, the database does not have to be an actual computery thing. Database could be etched in stone. Right? Database could be a bunch of Post-it notes. In our case, the database is actually going to be a program. Our database is going to be like a program that somebody wrote. We're going to start off with a program called MongoDB. Right? It's not the only one. MongoDB is, again, a program to which you can talk to store data in it, right? And to which I can talk to get data out of it. But it's only one solution. There's going to be other databases, like you'll explore Postgres later, like next week, early next week. MySQL, Oracle, right? There's all these different programs, just like how your browser is just a window into the internet. These are all programs that you can talk to store data and get data out. They all have their own opinions about how data can be structured and how data can be stored and how you can ask for data. They have their own opinions. Some of these have similar opinions. Some of them don't. But the basic idea that I want you to start off understanding is just that these are just places into which I throw data in. Now, when we were looking very briefly at the idea of a CSV, I mean, one of the nice things about a CSV is it has like a good structure to it. But unfortunately, I can't get very complex with a CSV. I'm only able to go Nima, 6'4", blonde. But if I wanted to start saying that Nima's friends and make a list of who Nima's friends are, like I might then have to go and like put all of Nima's friends in an array or something like that. Maybe if I wanted to store like even more and more and more data that had to do with Nima, this row would get very, very, very long. On top of that, the smart interactions that I want to have with the data here, I'd have to write my own stuff for it. So databases, for our purposes in the bootcamp, are going to fall under two kind of umbrellas. Right? One of them is what I'll call a NoSQL database. And the others are going to be SQL databases. Are we going to talk about what that means right now? No. You'll talk about that early next week. But I want you to know that right now, we're not doing SQL, whatever that means. Right. That's about as much as I want you to know about SQL versus NoSQL right now, is that there's both, regardless of what they actually are. So MongoDB. MongoDB is going to be the place where we store a bunch of data. And MongoDB has an opinion on how you structure data. We're going to look at it in a second. But at a high level, what we'll do with Mongo is we'll be able to say, hey, create a new database. Right? A database, I might have a database for a project. Right? So maybe make my tiny app database. And then in Mongo, I'll be able to say, make a collection. Right? So maybe one of my collections could be all my users. And then my other collection might be, what could another collection be? My URLs. Right? This is what Mongo likes to think of how you structure your data. You say, I have a database, I'll have my collections, and then inside of my collections, I'll have records. Right? So every user is going to be a record in a collection. Every URL is going to be a record in the collection. And the way that we'll see data get stored into Mongo is as big JSON objects, right? Just JSON. In fact, Mongo uses a thing called BSON, which stands for binary JSON, right? Because you can store images and stuff in here too. But the structure of it's actually going to look very familiar to you in a second. OK. We're going to, in a second, dive into looking at Mongo. Are there any questions at the moment? Right. So, important before we look at the code, Mongo is a program. Mongo is a program that we're going to be running separately. In the lecture, I will be running this, like the Mongo program, separately by hand. Right? In the lecture, I will be doing that. For you, your Vagrant is actually already running Mongo. It's running in the background, and you don't see it. Right? So if I look up MongoDB, get a nice link at the top in Google. I click on it. Very nice. Hey, y'all, what color is this? What color is the background of the thing, of this little banner? Purple. Oh, man. Yeah, bad news for you. What color is it? It's white. OK. Let me Google something else real quick. All right. What color is this? It's like a brown, right? Notice that these two pages look a little bit similar in style and font. And when you go into the documentation, where'd you go? Documentation. When you go into the documentation, like they have a very similar style, sort of. People tend to get lost between these two websites. We're going to explore both of them, but I want to make a distinction right now. The white website is one website. The brown website is for a different thing. Right? So whenever you're looking at documentation moving forward, make sure you know which one you're looking at. Because this one here, the white one is the MongoDB documents. The other one is MongoDB with Node.js. Slightly different. The code actually looks really similar, but it's not exactly the same. So Mongo is a program that's actually running on your machine already. And I can access Mongo. If I was to go into my terminal, where'd you go? If I was to access Mongo in my terminal, what I would do is scroll down a little bit, and I get this thing. Now, I'm not back in my shell. I can't ls. I'm in a particular kind of shell. It's not my usual Vagrant shell. This is called the Mongo shell. So Mongo is a program that's running, and I can actually talk to it using a console. Okay? I could dive into it and start asking it questions, such as, for example, show me all your databases that are already in there. Here are all my databases. Right? I have a bunch. Is there one that sticks out to you a little bit? Tweeter, of course, right? Tweeter's in there. And this was, it's 0 gigabytes. It's pretty small. This is probably a couple kilobytes. And I've got hip hop. Hip hop is 0.118 gigabytes. A big demo. So I've got a pretty big hip hop database in here. Maybe I want to use the hip hop database. In Mongo, the command is going to be use, and then the name of the database, hip hop. I switch to the database hip hop. Now all these commands I'm going to have in notes for you. I want to explore what's in the hip hop databases. Now, what did I say that a Mongo, like a Mongo database is structured like? It has collections, right? It does have JSON, but collections is like the name that we use to say like groupings of things. So I could go show me the collections. And when I see a particular collection that I want to play with, I can go DB. I can say the collection. Okay. db.artists. And then I can start querying it. I can say, hey, find me one artist. Found an artist. Let's scroll up a little bit to see who this is. Bum, bum, bum. Yeah, it's Kanye West. Surprise! So this is a database I put together a couple years ago. Anybody here a fan of Lil B? No? Okay, so Lil B is a rapper. He's not very good at all, really. But people call him the based god. So for my webpage go. There you go. So if you look up data-based, one of the projects that you'll find, actually the project that you'll find, is data-based. My scripts to create a hip-hop data set. That's what we'll be playing around with today. To give you an idea of the collections that I have in here, I have artists, I have songs, and I have lyrics. So actually, if you want to build your own data set of hip-hop stuff, you can use these scripts to generate it. So the last time I generated it was 3 years ago. So if there's new artists, like they're not in here. I use this data set to do a couple interesting things. For example, language warning. Language warning. There's like word clouds of the most used words by Drake and Nicki Minaj. So, you know, here's Mick Jenkins. I did this for to give you an idea of what people might work on as like side projects. I did this when I was trying to get my first like co-op, like my first internship. So the night before, I'm like sweating. I've been working on this thing for like a couple days. Finally get the database up. I'm like, all right, let's make a couple cool things that I can show at the interview tomorrow. And I make a couple word clouds, and I look at it, and I'm like, oh, I didn't think of that. Oh man, this is terrible, right? So I still ended up like putting it on there. And at the interview, the guy was like, so I've looked at your project, and tell me a little bit about this hip hop thing. And yeah, I ended up getting the job, which was nice. It was very chill. The other things that I did in here in the goodies are used a machine learning model to generate songs. They're just meaningless, random songs. This one's a Kanye West song. I could not of the stall my cool high. Yeah. Or here's a really messy graph of how different artists are related. When I say messy, I mean like really messy. But these are like sub-genres of hip hop based on who's worked with whom, which is really funny to see like clusters of sub-genres. So you end up seeing, this is like a couple years ago, like alternative New York hip hop. And then you look over here and it's like Rihanna and Ray J and Timbaland. And then you go up here and it's like backpacker hip hop stuff. So Aesop Rock and LP, right? Things like that. And then Flying Lotus is on his own. I don't know if anybody's like a Flying Lotus fan, but so that's the data that we're working with. And I would like to start asking it questions. I'd like to start asking it things like, hey, get me not one artist, but find me all of the artists, right? And I go find, and when I go find, it gets me all of the artists. And since I have db.artists.count, hold your breath, I have 1,690 artists in here. If there's an artist that you like from 3 years ago and before, they're in here, right? I can start querying for particular artists. For example, I might want to, if I look at the way like an artist is structured, they have a name. I might be able to filter by the name. I could go find me one artist, and instead of finding me the very first artist, I might say find me the artist with the name. Any ideas for? Oh, you know I interviewed them? Yeah, I interviewed Opio. Yeah, a couple of years ago. There's the interviews online. Souls of Mischief. Damn. Oh, that's embarrassing. So maybe, wait, let me try Yassine Bey real quick. No, okay, so when I'm looking for the artist, it might be that the structure of the thing isn't immediately named, and then I can start messing around with what my artist information actually looks like. So this object is genuinely gigantic, so I'll have to like scroll way up to see, and my artist might go genres, pop rap, got ID, I've got related artists. So name was all the way down there. Go find me the artist with the name Kanye West. So Souls of Mischief is not there. Yassine Bey is not. Tupac? Tupka. Unfortunately, everybody has like all sorts of different names. So Tupac might be Tupac, yeah, with the two. Right? So I've got Tupac in here, right, with all of Tupac's information. Might have other things in here. Hieroglyphics. Yes. So I've got hieroglyphics in here. I could even see how popular hieroglyphics is, right? Now, among the other things that I have are things like genres. So I might want to ask, hey, find me all the people that match a particular genre, right? So if I go, find me all the artists that have the genre pop rap, right? Or find me one, then I get the artist that has the genre pop rap. Or if I go find me all of the artists that have the genre pop rap and then count them, I have 29 pop rap artists in here. So the point of me showing you this right now is not to actually teach you the syntax for Mongo, right? I want to make that really clear. What I'm trying to show you is that the data kind of lives in a bucket somewhere, right? And by learning a particular language to play with it, right, I can actually get stuff back. Now, the syntax that Mongo chooses actually seems pretty familiar to you if you start like really kind of staring at it a bit. What does this kind of look like? Kind of looks like JavaScript, right? So Mongo has picked a syntax that is very similar to JavaScript, right? It's not exactly JavaScript. It can't do let a equals 3. Apparently it can. What the heck? OK, you couldn't do this before. So apparently I can do some JavaScript things, but I won't have access to things like window, right, which you have on the thing. Or I won't have access to some. I can't require things in here, right? What you use the Mongo shell for is to play around with data a little bit and to get a feeling for what's going on, right? Maybe to play around with what your queries could be. For example, I want to find all of the songs that have the artist Kanye West. I have 132 Kanye West songs in here, right? How many songs do I have that have Tupac? 122. Yes. Right. So this query looks a little bit different than the one I wrote before, because when I was doing find me one that has maybe the name hieroglyphics, right? It was DB artists find one, and then an artist had the structure name in there. With a song, I haven't shown you what a song looks like yet, but a song actually has a genius primary artist property. And then inside of that genius primary artist property, there's a name property. And I'm asking, find me one that matches Kanye West. So I can dig deeper into these complex objects. In fact, I'll show you what a song looks like right now. Here's what a song looks like. Right? It was the very first song in my songs collection, Mercy by Kanye West. So this song here has a title, has a lyrics URL if I want to go see the lyrics, has a Genius primary artist where there's information about the artist, and then the ID of the artist on the website Genius, which is where they store lyrics online. So as I look at a song, I could make all kinds of other queries. I might say, hey, find me one where I want to find all the songs that are made by a verified artist, right? Or find me all of the songs that are called, maybe find me all the songs that are called Mercy. Right? Happen to be 4 songs called Mercy in my database. Right? And that's the kind of tinkering that you can start playing around with. Right? You can do a ton of stuff in the Mongo shell. It's great. I have lyrics in here. Lyrics. Find one. So here are some lyrics. The lyrics are made up of text, the ID of the song, and then the title of the song. Right? So if I wanted to find the lyrics for what song? What's that? Mercy. Then I'll go Mercy. And this is the lyrics for the song Mercy. Right? Cool? If I wanted to, I could start making all kinds of connections between stuff. Right? Like I could go find an artist, like the first artist that does trap, and then find me their song, and then find me the lyrics for their song. I could do these chained kind of queries. Right? And that's somewhere where I could go. I'm not going to do that right now through the Mongo shell. We'll do a little bit of that as we're working forwards in the demo. So Mongo shell, again, the reason that I'm showing you this is to identify the fact that Mongo is a program that's running in your machine. It's always, like in your case, it's always running. And if you want to talk to it, one way for you to talk to it is to go into the shell, say, hey, get me that. For example, for Tweeter, one way for you to talk to it is go db dot maybe tweets dot find one to get the first tweet, or dot find to get me all of the tweets. I will give you a cheat sheet. I will give you a cheat sheet of the things that you can do with a Mongo shell. But to really break it down, any of the CRUD actions, I can create things. If I wanted to insert a song into, let's see, use hip hop. If I want to insert a song or an artist, artist.insert, I can actually give information about what I want my artist to have. For example, the name, Big Nemes, and then my ID is like 1337. Right? All kinds of stuff. Description. Songs about JavaScript. Songs about JavaScript. JavaScript. There you go. And I can put this stuff in, and then go insert one, and what I get back is acknowledged, true. And now I've technically created something. If I go db.artists.find one that has the name Big Nemes, there's Big Nemes. I could do the same thing with my songs and insert stuff in there, and my lyrics and insert in there. So creating works. You can also update one. If I go, actually, I'm going to try something fun. I'm going to go let nemes equals db.artists.find one with the name Big Nemes. I actually haven't tried this before. Sweet, I didn't know you could do that. The Mongo shell is not something that you actually do a lot of coding in. You really just hop into it to do some messing around with the queries. But I guess if you want, you can take stuff and put it in variables. And what might be interesting to do is see, I'm not going to do this now, but see if you can go nemes.update or something like that to see if you can pass stuff to it. Actually, let's see, name Lil Nemes. No, okay, I can't do that. That's cool. So if I wanted to update, what I would do is update one, and I'd have to find the person with the name big names. I might get the syntax wrong in the first try, but update their name to Lil Names. Yeah. Let's contain. Whenever you get stuck on figuring out what the Mongo syntax should be, the Mongo documentation is actually amazing in terms of what they've put over here. If you go through things like getting started, what they've got built in is little code examples that as you work your way forward, into how to do CRUD operations in Mongo, they actually have, and I'll show this to you in the JS driver as well, they have like built-in code examples that you can play around with to do like inserts and things like that. They kind of just hide it in different places, and the documentation moves around all over the place. So as Steven mentioned in the Slack, some of the links that are in Compass are dead. So follow the links that I give you in the notes for figuring out how to install the Mongo.js driver. Right? So for the update documents, there is the update many, where you give it update one, a filter, and then the value that you want to update it with. So for example, there you go, update one, and then the value goes $set with the thing. I just forgot the $set. So we'll go back to this. $set, and then you have to go all the way back. There we go. And now when I go look for find one with the ID 1337 that I'd set for myself, my name is now Lil Names instead of Big Names. Right? So your updating works. If I want to destroy one, you could go dbartists.find one with the ID 1337 and delete one. Delete one with the ID 1337, and now Nima doesn't exist anymore. Right? All of those things are possible. Right? What we would like to do is not work through the shell. Right? If you notice, like I forget the syntax for doing stuff through the shell, and the reason for that is you don't spend a ton of time in it. Right? You just kind of mess around in there. What we want to do is maybe interface with this using Node. So what we'll do is we'll install a program or a module, a little driver into our Node programs to then talk to Mongo. Right? We'll do that right after the break, and then we'll use that to catapult into a big demo. I wanted to show you one of the things that you can do with things like Mongo or databases is just in general do things like find with regex MongoDB, meaning like let's find things that like include a particular name or pattern. And what I like doing with this is in this particular thing, you can do find me all the people, like find me all the artists. Find me all the artists that have the name starting off with Lil. Right? All the artists that start off with Lil. Whoops. And then I could count. Oh. So I have 21 Lils and 17 Bigs. So just in case you were wondering, in this database, the Lils outnumber the Bigs by, like 12. Cool? Are there any questions about what we've done so far? I don't want you to memorize any of the syntax. I'm going to give you a cheat sheet of things, but the basic idea is create, read, update, destroy are just going to have their own syntax, right? The queries that you write for Tweeter are going to be not very nested. Right? So the the most complicated thing that you'll probably have to do in Tweeter is like this, like db tweets find. Like that's the most complicated thing that you'll probably have to do, unless you decide to do funkier stuff. Cool? All right, so we'll take a break, and then we'll come back. We'll do, does 10 minutes sound good? Sweet, so we'll meet again at 10:12. What's up? So welcome back. What we're going to do now is start diving into JavaScript and using JavaScript to talk with Mongo. And it's going to be similar to what you're doing for Tiny App. Now, through this, we're actually going to need to have a bit of a conversation about some stuff that you've seen in JavaScript before and talked a little bit about, but I'm going to go a little bit deeper. Huh? Did I say Tiny App? I meant Tweeter. Whoops. Oh man. Look, I'm done. I'm leaving. No. Yeah, Tiny App's your final project. Yeah. Did you not see Demo Day? They're all built off of Tiny App. They're all to use the same code base. All built with EJS. So what we're going to do is start talking about the driver, but I wanted to give you a little bit of history first. Some people say I talk too much about Kanye West. I'm inclined to agree. Hot tip, I think Kanye West is great, right? Or not hot tip, fun fact, I guess. I think Kanye West is great. Awesome producer, awesome rapper. One of the best producer rappers. But in my opinion, neither the best producer nor the best rapper, right? Maybe Mos Def? I don't know. Who's the best? Drake, I guess, right? No. Who is the best rapper? I mean, I really like Aesop Rock and stuff like that. Stuff that doesn't really appeal. Best producer. Who's the best producer, Carlo? Kanye is the best producer. LP is great. He's very good. Jay Dilla, yeah. Well, all right, we'll leave this to the end so that whoever doesn't want to be part of the conversation not be part of it. But just a fun fact, the reason that a lot of my lectures have Kanye West in it is that this was the second lecture that I ever did, and I needed to pick a theme for it. And I'm like, hey, I already have a Mongo database that has artists in it. Maybe I'll make a thing that's based around one artist. And the first artist that I used as the seed in this database to begin the scraping was Kanye. So he has the most information compared to everybody else. I'm like, we'll do Kanye. And that's where we're at. So what we're going to do now is start talking about dealing with Mongo and JavaScript together. I'm going to make a folder and call it Mongo node example. Right? Mongo node example. And in here, I'm going to go, all right, let's make an app.js or whatever, or index.js might be a better name. Because I'm just going to do a quick little script that should do something like print out all the, or let's say print out all the Kanye songs, right? All the songs by Kanye West. So conceptually, among the things that I might need to do here are what? What would you assume I need to do if I need to eventually talk to Mongo in my JavaScript? I might need to npm install something. What might I need to npm install? Right, some MongoDB driver, right? Which we're going to look at the docs in a second. Instead of showing you the docs immediately, I want us to think about the things that we might have to do, and then see how the code actually enacts those things. Right? So I might need to npm install a Mongo driver so that I can actually use it. Right? So after I've npm installed it and it's in my package.json, what do I need to do in my script? I need to maybe require the Mongo driver. Right? What would the next thing that I might want to do be? App.use? So what's app.use for? I'm at the moment, I'm not building an Express app. I'm just going to make a script that goes and grabs things from Mongo and then prints them out. Right? So I might want to maybe connect to Mongo. Right? That's one thing that I'll probably have to do, since my application and Mongo are two separate things. So I might need some way to say, hey, connect so that I can talk to Mongo. And once I've connected, what do I want to do? What's that? Right, so maybe handle errors for connection. Right, that totally makes sense. I could do that here when I connect to Mongo. If there's an error, just print out that there's an error. But another thing that I might want to do is maybe ask for all the Kanye songs. I can do that once I've connected, right? Ask for all the Kanye songs in the hip hop hip hop database. And then after I've gotten it, I want to print it out. So the steps here that include the Mongo driver and the connect to Mongo are particularly important. I also want you to see that this stuff here, asking for the Kanye songs, needs to happen after I've connected to Mongo. And after that connection has happened. So we're going to go into the terminal. I'm going to leave Mongo here. I'm going to go into the Mongo node example. And I'll do an npm init-y. npm init-y just to start up a node project. And we'll look at what the docs say. Close this. We'll look at what the docs say. So the docs for the, where did my page go? There we go. The docs for the Mongo node driver are the ones that have the brown background. So when you're working with the shell, you can go to the white background one and learn about how to do stuff in the shell. But that's actually not going to translate exactly over to the node stuff. First thing that we need to do is actually install the driver. I'm working in version 3 right now. That's what I'm going to be using. Be careful when you go to the MongoDB docs page. This thing here, there's all kinds of drivers over here. You'll want to pick probably the newest one or the one that matches what Compass is telling you to use, right? So off the top of my head, I can't remember what version Compass tells you to use, but it'll tell you a version. So go use that one, right? Slight differences in syntax, and that's it. Slight differences in syntax. So I'm in the 3.2 driver here at the moment. And installing it just involves going npm install MongoDB. That's all that it's going to involve doing right now. I'll go to the terminal. I'll go npm install MongoDB. Now we're in the game. Without even looking at the docs, the first thing that I like doing is let's go const MongoDB equals require MongoDB, and just see if this works. It may or may not. Node index.js, and it did. So something right happened. Right? I'm not actually doing anything with MongoDB yet. I just required it in. I'm going to go look at the docs some more. When I want to actually use the thing, go to the quick start. Here is some basic code to do what we said we would do in comments. First thing, actually bring in MongoDB. But they asked me to bring in the client. Now, this here is the syntax for 3.2, right? The 3.2 driver. Yours that you follow, I can't guarantee that it's exactly the same. Right? So don't take this stuff by heart. Understand more like the concept. So in this case here, they're asking me to bring in the client. They bring in a library called assert, which you actually, I think you talked about in week 1, day 5, which is it just checks to see if things are true or false, or correct or not. We're going to use that in a second. They make a URL to somewhere, right? MongoDB localhost 27017. That's where the Mongo program is running. Right? That's where the Mongo program is running, and I can talk to it through there. Database name, whatever your database name is called. Client creates the client. This looks pretty similar to maybe like your Express stuff. Right? You say make it, and it starts running. And then here, this down here says connect the client. So when you make the client, it's not immediately connected, but you say connect it, and then what happens? A callback. Why do we have a callback? because we have to wait to finish after it's connected. Connecting takes time. We're going to be seeing a lot of callbacks here, a lot of callbacks, because the thing is, Mongo and my program are different. They're not the same person. So communicating between them takes time. And with JavaScript, whenever something takes time, we need to register the event to happen later. Right? And we use callbacks for that. Over time, you'll learn maybe other patterns. But right now, callbacks are going to be our thing to say, after you connect, here's what you do. Right? So after you connect, assert equal null error. This line just says make sure there's no error, just like Steven mentioned. Make sure there's no error. Then it console logs something. And what it's done in this case here is taken the client, accessed the database by the name that we said we wanted, my project, and just saved it to a variable. And then they end up closing the connection. So nothing actually happens here. It just opens up a connection and then closes it. Notice that closing the connection happens after we open it in the callback. I'm going to copy all this code right now. I'm going to paste it in. And paste it in, and I'm just going to run this as it is right now. Connected successfully to server. Okay. The deprecation warning here is saying that in the future, Mongo driver is not going to be very happy about me writing this thing, but this is fine for now. Now what I can do is start messing around with this and say, oh, my database is called hip hop. My database is called hip hop, and I run this. Right? Still works. Nothing particularly special happened. Now, I said I want to ask for all the Kanye songs, which means somewhere in here, I'm going to need to ask for the songs in the hip hop database and then print them out and then close. This stuff needs to happen inside of client.connect. And I could go to the documentation. And I could continue scrolling through, and they're like, oh, this is how you insert a document. I don't want to insert something right now. This is how you find all the documents. Find documents with a filter. Can we just stare at this for a second? It's saying, using the database, right? So this is a function they've made called find documents. That given a database, and maybe given a callback to run, it would go database collection documents. So it's trying to find the documents collection. And then it says, in that collection, find the things that match this query. Right? I'm just going to copy this part here. I'm going to copy that, and then we're going to come back and continue with it. They made it as a function. I'm going to make it in line here and say, hey, the collection that I'm looking for, so maybe my artists, we'll do artists for now. Artists. I could go find me all the artists with the name Kanye West. Just want to make sure that that was the thing that I had said to Mongo was the name big names, title Mercy. That's songs. Yeah, so it was find an artist with the name Kanye West. So, oh, wait, no. Find an artist with the name. Oh, because I'm not on use hip hop. There you go. So find an artist with the name Kanye West. And that's what I'm going to do over here. Find an artist with the name Kanye West. And if I just take this and go let artists returned, and I go console.log artists returned, what I'm going to see in the terminal is not exactly what I hoped I would find. I get this thing out. Kind of a mess. Sort of similar to maybe like a response object or something like that. This is a thing called a cursor. And it's a particular kind of object that is connected to the database. And I can continue using this object to continue make queries. Really, all I want is to get my artist returned as an array. Right? Maybe I want all my all the artists that match Kanye West, which there should just be one. We're going to change it to Kanye songs in a second. But all the artists that match Kanye West as an array. And what Mongo gives me is a function that says toArray. So I can take get me the artists, change them to an array, and then console.log console that array. You can name this thing instead of docs anything you want. Artist array. You can do that in there. And now what I should see when I run this is artist return is not defined because I'm trying to run something here. What I should see when I run this now is the artist that matches Kanye West with all the related artists and all that other information. This is a bit easier to kind of see, I guess, than working directly in the Mongo shell, in my opinion. But it requires a bit more stuff to be added. So often when I'm crafting a query, I'll craft it in the Mongo shell and then move over to Node and start messing around in here. Right? Like, for example, if I want to find not all the artists that match Kanye West, but all the songs, find me all the songs that have the genius primary, what was it called? It's the genius primary artist is Kanye West. So we had that query up here, which was find me all the ones that have DB songs, genius primary artist name being Kanye West. Now I get all the songs that are Kanye. Now, I might, the syntax might not work immediately because what I'm dealing with now is trying to query by something that's filtered. I might start off by just trying it out and see if it works. If it doesn't, then I could look into the docs and just Google what's going on. And now when I run this, got null at the moment. So apparently the way I wrote the query was incorrect to find the songs that have a genius primary artist name being Kanye West. I actually do have a nice version of this query somewhere, which I'm going to pull up right now. We're going to look at it and run it here. So let me go Kanye, and then routes and songs.filter. Where'd you go? Oh, no, that's not the one. Kanye complete. So what we're going to be building is basically a website that has primary artist name. A website that has the lyrics of Kanye West, and we want to be able to edit them and maybe be able to delete them and stuff like that. Basically, the query is going to be find primary artist name, Kanye West, like that. It's the same. Artist name, primary artist name. Weird. Well, we'll find out why it doesn't work in a sec. This isn't the biggest deal. Are we seeing the connection to Mongo through Node in here? Right? That's what we need to be working with. Now, the thing is, let me just get rid of this dead code. The thing is, if I wanted to continue doing this stuff, having it written directly inside a client connect is going to be a huge pain. So instead, what I might do is take this thing and move it out into a function, const get Kanye, maybe. Move it into a function that says, hey, I take, given a database, this is what I do with it. And then inside of here, I'd be able to say, get Kanye with the particular database. Right? So we're going to be working on making little helper functions. Okay. This was a little sandbox environment where I'm just messing around with the Mongo database. What I have is a slightly larger project called KanyeLyrics.com. When we look at KanyeLyrics.com for the first time, the world's premier Kanye lyrics source, and it's got all his big songs. Old MacDonald, good one. Row, row, row your boat, also a good one. Baba Black Sheep, great stuff. Row, row, row your boat, a little bit controversial. Gently down the stream, those are the lyrics here. And if we look at Old MacDonald, had a farm. Baba Black Sheep, have you any wool? All right, so we have some lyrics in here. We have the form for editing, but it doesn't actually do anything. And we have a button for deleting, but it doesn't actually do anything yet. This is essentially your tiny app structure at the moment, right? Where basically, if we were to look at the code, what I've done with it is, this is like a contrived version of your tiny app. What I've done with it is, there's these different routes. So for example, index is the route for the home page, where it has all the songs in an array. Has all the songs in an array. And then every time somebody makes a GET request to slash, it renders the index page, the index EJS page, and it passes the songs in like this. So if I was to go ahead and edit this and go, oh, here's another one, woo, and I'll give it another ID, 4, and some lyrics. If I was to restart my application and refresh my app, I now have a 4th song. But I don't want to pull these songs here. I don't want to pull these songs here from this object. I want to pull them from Mongo. Right? I want to pull them from the hip hop database. So what we do with this is we end up writing something that's very, very similar to what we have here. Right? Artist find, yada, 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 to create the artist array, or in our case, the songs array. I think the main issue with the syntax not working with the thing I was doing before is this project here is written with 3.1 for the driver as opposed to 3.2, so they might have just changed the syntax a little bit. So what I want to be able to do with something like this is, instead of having the songs hard-coded, I want to be able to say const songs equals like get songs from Mongo, maybe. Right? Get songs from Mongo, and then do this. Unfortunately, this here, getting songs from Mongo, is going to take time. So since it takes time, what I'm going to need to do is say, get songs from Mongo, and then when you have the songs, here is what you do. Right? Unfortunately, this is what I'm going to have to do. So I have a little bit of code for this already. I'm going to start slowly bringing in. Kanye complete. Go index. So the first part of it is to actually bring in the Mongo client. Right? So if I was to go over to my one that has the hard-coded songs, I could comment out all of these songs and say at the top of it, bring in my Mongo client. After I have the Mongo client, the next thing that I need to do is actually have my Mongo URL and the database name that I'm going to be working with. Right? And then I want to say something like that, like connect to Mongo. And once you're connected, or TC peer connection, connect to Mongo, and then once you're connected, do the rest of the stuff. Right? So the syntax for that is going to be identical to what we did before, which is create a Mongo client connection. Now, I did this one here. I did this one here in 2 lines as opposed to 1 line. So I'm not doing this to confuse you, but rather, as you look at how to do things with Mongo and Node, you're going to find like 4 different syntaxes for it. And you're going to need to just mess around to see what works with your system. Right? So for example, when I tried to copy in code from the old version of the Mongo driver to my new example, right, that was made with 3.2, like things would break. If I look at my Kanye lyrics app built with Mongo, I already have Mongo installed in here, and it's using like 3.1. And the way that they want me to connect with is Mongo client.connect, as opposed to client and then client.connect. You're just going to have to mess around to see what documentation actually works for you. Right? I know that's not the most fun thing to do, but that's something that you're just going to have to get used to as a developer, is that sometimes between versions of things, documentation like conflicts. Is that all right? So in my case, I have Mongo client connect, and after I connect to the client, then I can take my get songs from Mongo and all that stuff and put it in here. Get songs from Mongo doesn't actually exist yet. This isn't a function that I've made. So I want to connect first, and then I want to do the rest of this thing. At this point in like working on an application, I've actually broken my project. If I was to try and like use this now and restart my project and check it out, it's broken and it hurts. It's very oh, I actually didn't npm install MongoDB. It's very like upsetting when the stuff doesn't work out. So what I would recommend to do is do it in bits and pieces where I don't actually immediately get rid of the songs. I can have these things still in here up at the top and all that, and only make teeny, teeny little changes at a time. So I still have my songs, and Mongo client connect. Right? I got the error that says I haven't installed Mongo yet, so I'm going to do that in a second. And I'll just make sure that like the only new lines of code that I've added are this so far. npm install MongoDB. Now that I'm here, my thing still works, and it's still pulling the old object. But I can start bringing in my stuff that asks for get the new songs, which would be, hey, when you connect, get the database being hip hop, get the collection songs, and then I'm going to have to ask for all of the songs. I'm going to have to ask from my collection, hey, find me all of the songs that match the Genius primary artist with Kanye West. Turn that to an array, and then return the EJS file index with the songs. So that's going to have to happen in steps. Unfortunately, the EJS file expects songs that have a format that goes title, ID, and lyrics, or at least title and ID. But the stuff that I get back from Mongo does not look like that. In fact, if I console log what I actually get back from Mongo over here from my docs, if I console log that, this is what the songs coming back from Mongo look like. They have a Genius primary artist, they have a Genius ID, they have a title, but they don't actually have a normal ID. So what I'm going to need to do is take the Genius ID and turn it into ID, to make sure that the format of my data actually matches the format that's expected by my view. So I could do that with a map. I could do something like, hey, mapped songs is, and I could go through all my documents, and I could map them to change the properties. In fact, I have that written here. Where I could map my songs to say, map them so that the title is still the same, but so that the ID is the Genius ID. And once that's done, once that mapping is done, then I can actually plug that back into the index. So I'm going to see right now when I look at this, this is still my old songs. But in my code, if I was to change songs now to mapped songs, now the songs I'm getting are not the songs array, but the songs from my database. And I run this, and now I have all these Kanye West songs from the database. Right. Now, it can feel like I actually added a lot of code, but there wasn't very much. The thing is, the structure of the code has to work in that make the connection first, then make the query, and then return the stuff. So the steps don't look very linear. They're nested in. But what I want you to see when I give you the code is I have two projects on here. One of them is the original one, and then the other one is the one that's got Mongo put into it with a bunch of features that we're going to look at in a second somewhere. And I just want you to see that, the difference. As in, what did I have to add to connect it? So in case you wanted to go back to your Tiny app, for example, you'd be able to see how you could connect Tiny app to Mongo. The nice thing about Mongo is that I can just store a bunch of JavaScript in there. Or not JavaScript, a bunch of JSON objects in there. Just put it, it works. Now I no longer need this songs, so I can get rid of it. And I'm going to start running my program with NodeMon, so that I don't have to restart my program every time. So this is good. And what I would like to do now is click on a song and have it take me to the place. At the moment, the way my EJS is set up is that when you click on the thing, it takes you to a page that matches /lyrics, and then the ID of the song. Now, I could go into my project and start exploring where does that route go down. When we first started working with the Kanye project, I kind of hand-waved the structure of this thing, and I went right into routes index. Technically, the beginning of any project is going to be its first JavaScript file in the center of it, so app.js. This here is a big project that's actually been built up to sort of match the structure of your tweeter backend. And your tweeter backend is built up so that it's got a bunch of middleware and whatever built into it. And among the things it has are little routers, so that all your tweets routes are in one place, and all your, if you do user routes later, like user routes go into one place, and that way your application ends up having many files, as opposed to being 300 lines long like TinyApp was. So it takes each of those things that have a similar route, and it puts them into a different file. In my case here, I put all the ones that are slash something, and I put them in my index router. Here I'm taking everything that's slash lyrics, and it goes in my lyrics router. So slash lyrics slash 87225, that could conceivably be inside of my lyrics router. If I was to follow where my lyrics router comes from, it comes from slash routes slash lyrics. So I could go there. Wow. Did you know you could do that with VS Code? Yeah. So if you see a thing, if you see like a file, I'm in app.js, and you see something that you want to see where it got declared, you can go right-click, go to definition, and it'll take you to the place where that gets declared. So here the lyrics router gets declared here, but the routes slash lyrics, that gets declared in a different file. So it takes me to a different file, which is cool. I'll see that the way it works over on my lyrics router, if I have my get slash ID route, is that it's been hard-coded to work with some more hard-coded songs. There's two things I can do here. I could either make a new Mongo connection here, right? I could make a new Mongo connection here, or I could move my old Mongo connection to some other place where I could just pass it to everybody who needs it. I'll say that the correct thing to do, the nice thing to do, is to take that Mongo connection and put it way up at the top of your application so that everybody gets it. What I'm going to do right now, because I really want to drive home the point of connect, query, and then get, is I'm gonna do it again in here. Right? In your tweeter, they'll instruct you like not have it that way, and you'll see. So what I want to do is, for example, when I get the song slash ID, instead of filtering my hard-coded songs, what I would like to do is actually like get the particular song from Mongo. I still need to do that setup that I had before, which was, in my case, bring in the Mongo client, set up the URL and the database name, and already you see that I'm like repeating myself, right? Set up the database, make a connection. So, whoops. Make the Mongo client connection, and then once I've made the connection, that's where I go and say declare all my routes. So I could take all of this stuff here, and I move all my routes within the Mongo client connection. Again, we see that this is the same pattern as before. Make my connection, then declare my routes. If I console.log like new connection here, and I console.log new connection in the other one as well, I would see that when my application starts up, it prints out new connection twice. Right? 2 places. Now I said I want my lyrics to be pulled from the particular Mongo collection there. So in the same way that I had find the artist and like their songs, this one here is going to say, hey, when you make a get to slash ID, what I'm going to need to do is you make a get/id, instead of getting the found song like this, I'm going to actually need to like use the collection, right? Use the collection, which I haven't set up yet, right? Use the collection to find a song that matches the Genius ID that came in through the parameters. Right? So these are the parameters that were in the URL. The parameters might be 3, 7, 4, 5. When parameters come in through Express, they're strings. So I need to turn it into a number. And then after that's done, I should be able to use that song for something. Now, in order for me to go collection, I need something that goes, well, let collection equal, and I want to be able to access my songs, or my lyrics, rather. So I have a line up here, goes, get me the collection to be the lyrics from the database. And I can do this in my route, or I could do this somewhere else, like up above. Now what I'm going to say is, now that I have the collection lyrics, I'm connected. Every time I ask for a song, that's what I'm going to do first, is try to go find the song. I'm not going to actually use the song yet. I'm just trying to find it first. Trying to find the song by the Genius ID. And then I'm still, all of the rest of my logic is the same. This still doesn't work. I get an error that says DB is not defined. That is, oh, so the error here says DB is not defined on const collection equals. So what I could do here is go up here and say, well, why is DB not defined? Do I have DB up here anywhere? I don't. I have collection lyrics. So I should actually do this after I make the connection where my DB equals, and just like I did before, I have to say from my client, grab the database with the name. So my name could be hip hop, or since I already put it in a variable called dbName, I can do that. Now my thing's running properly, and if I go refresh, no, it's OK that the page doesn't work. Oh, wait. Cannot read property title of undefined. It's OK that the page doesn't work because I'm technically trying to do things. I'm technically trying to do things with a song in my hard-coded array that doesn't exist. Now, my song needs to have an ID, a title, and lyrics. My doc that I get through, this doc that I get through here is still not a proper song. The doc that I get through is still one of those big cursor things. So what did we have to do to take this cursor and actually use it? I had to array it. So I could take the doc, go to array, and in here, then I can do stuff. Right? If I was to look at one of my songs, I would see that, I mean, we could go console.log lyrics in here and see what I actually end up getting. So when I refresh this page, it still breaks, which is fine. But in my thing, I get a title, I get some text, and I get a Genius ID. So what I could do is say, well, the title is the lyrics title. The ID is the lyrics.genius ID. And the lyrics would be the lyrics.text. Right? So I've had to massage my stuff a little bit to make it connect to the data that I have. Cannot read property split of undefined. That's totally fine. We'll see. So text. Oh, actually. What's that? Say that loud. They can't hear. It's you went quieter but higher pitched. It's an array, right? The stuff that I get back from my database. In this case here, when I said find me all the songs that match with the Genius ID, is it gives me an array of all the songs. Granted, there's only one. Maybe what I could do is say find one. I don't know if this will work. I'll have to look at the docs to see if find one is the thing that they put in there. Looks like it didn't. And I could look into the thing here and see, oh, apparently doc2array is not a function when I do find one. I could see what's going on with that and all that. What I'm going to do is just realize that what I get back with the docs is an array. So my lyrics should actually be, say that again? Yeah, it's the first one. So I'll say that my lyrics is from all the lyrics, get me the very first one. The very first one. And now when I refresh this, what? The lyrics for Clique. See the lyrics for Heartless. Right. I have done some formatting on the front end to make this thing look pretty. Right. But the important part is we have the data connected now. What? Now it's connected. I know that through the process of this, I kind of brought in a whole bunch of new code. And again, for this lecture, what I'm trying to get across is not the syntax at all. In fact, for your tweeter, you're not really doing this entire process. Right? Tweeter is mostly a jQuery application. We have a little bit of Mongo stuff in there. Right? Next week, you're going to be doing more hardcore stuff with databases using Postgres. Right? Postgres, it's not that Mongo isn't great, but Postgres is the tool that you're really going to be learning to use for your midterm project. Right? So the only thing to really focus on today is understanding that we can connect somewhere, right? That there's options for how we want to connect. And if you really want to, you can dive into how the MongoDB driver works specifically. Right? I always start my applications with something that's hard-coded first. So right now, we've unhard-coded that stuff. And once you have it hard-coded, it's not the biggest deal to then, if you have that pipeline set up properly, to just flip it so that it goes through a database first, right? As opposed to what I had before. And does anyone have any questions about what we've done so far here? Are you comfortable with me saying that I don't want you to understand the code? Right? I know it's really tempting when you see somebody code in front of you to I need to understand all of it, right? But that's not the point of this lecture. Right? The point is really to break it down, and this will be in the notes, that there needs to be a connection before we ask for the data. Right? That's one. And the other one is, when we ask for the data, it takes time. So I need to put what I want to do in a callback. Right? Those are the main two things. As an extension, what I tried to show with this demo is that the data that I have in my database might be different than the data I expect. So maybe I've got to have a step in there to manipulate it a little bit. And now, it's 11:05. I'm going to let you go in a second. I'm not going to take us through coding the rest of it, but I have the code for the rest of the CRUD stuff. So I'm just going to show it to you. And then if you want to, you can play with it. For example, one of the things that you need to do with Tweeter is insert a new tweet, right? You might have to look at how this this thing, which was collection.find, might have to maybe turn into collection.insert, right? So you'll have to look at the documentation in the Node.js driver to find out how do you insert a thing, which might be insert many, right? Or there's an insert one in here as well. For my thing here, what I wanted to show you was, if I go over to Kanye Complete, among the things that I can do are edit songs. Okay, not this one. Oh no, we have to hook up edit songs. Oh, that's broken. Okay, so among the things that I could do is edit songs and also delete them to get them out of the way. And that's in the Kanye Complete that I will send you. But it's going to work exactly the same way, where when we make a GET request to edit, it'll have to do something. When you make a POST request to edit, it'll have to do something. Delete, it'll have to do something, which are going to wrap around what your result stuff is. Okay. When you look at your Tweeter code for the application that you're building right now, they will have broken this stuff into functions. Right? But I want you to make a line through and see how those functions actually correlate to what we did here. Are there questions? Oh, cool. I'll just let you loose to this point. There's no breakout today. Have a great rest of the day. Do message me if you do have questions.